Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name's Danielle and I'm the owner of Damn Fancy Creations and the Drunk Flamingo Glitter. If you guys are new to my channel, I do want to let you know that all of my groups and links are posted in the description below in case you want to check them out. Today's tutorial is going to be another fun snow globe tutorial, but this time we are going to be making our own large confetti pieces to add to our tumblers. I just love the larger heart pieces. It just gives a totally different feel to the snow globes, and we will be completing our tumbler with an epoxy drip made with Fast Set. Everything you see listed here will be covered in our tutorial, but if you guys have any questions about steps or materials that I use, please feel free to ask down below and I will come back and answer them. But for now, we're going to go ahead and get started on this tutorial, and I hope you guys enjoy. If you guys didn't know, I will be teaching 2 classes at the Mad Glitter Tumbler Extravaganza this July in Orlando, Florida. If you guys want information on this fun event, I will link all of the info down in the description below so you guys can check it out. I hope to see you guys there. Okay, y'all, so these are the tumblers we're using. I believe they are 24 ounce from Hog. They already come with the hole pre-made in them, so I do not need to make one. So I decided to take this skinny rod on my hot fix tool, and I am just placing it in the circle and kind of forcing it outward. So I'm kind of making a wide slit in the tumbler. And I used that original hole as a reference point. So I'm just dragging that hole outward basically and making a slit. And if any plastic pieces get caught on that slit or fall in the tumbler, you can just use a pair of tweezers. I typically have like a junky pair of tweezers that I don't care if they get messed up, which are these. And I'm just kind of digging that plastic out of there. And then I'm going to take the hot fix tool and I'm going to make the hole wider on the other side. So basically the whole bottom half of the tumbler is going to be about 1/4 of an inch hole all the way around. And you can wipe your hot fix tool off in between if there's any plastic on there. But y'all can see I'm just kind of forcing that tool to make that hole wider. And once I'm happy with the size of my hole, I'm going to take this tumbler downstairs. I'm going to smooth everything out with my Dremel tool with the flap wheel attachment. And then I will sand the entire bottom just so everything is nice and smooth and it's not going to be lumpy or anything like that. So once we get our tumbler ready to apply foils with, I cut out foils. I just used party foil. They can be a little difficult to find. I purchased this pack directly from the Cricut website. You may be able to find some in some craft stores like Joann's, Michael's, or Hobby Lobby. But I'm going to show you guys what cut settings I used for my cameo, because I can never remember what I cut stuff on, so this is a good reference for me as well. So I did it at speed 5, blade 3, and force 26. I also bumped it up to 28 as well, and I think 28 worked better. So I just cut out random sized hearts. Some of them were 3 inches in width, some of them were about 1.5 inches, some were a little smaller, and I just have random hearts. I just searched my computer for hearts and all of these popped up. I will try to see if I can find a little heart pack on Creative Fabrica and link it down below for y'all. And this particular pack of party foil came with gold, pearl, and rose gold. So I just cut out hearts in all of those colors. And I just used my tweezers to help remove them from my cutting mat. So now I have all of these little hearts. So now we're going to make our mixture. This is the Mgical liquid. I like to use also purified water. When you use Mgical liquid, you do have to make sure that your liquid is the correct consistency. I've had some people get a bad batch and it's very watery. If your Mgical liquid is watery, it's a bad batch. I would return it and get one that is thicker. It should be almost like a jelly or hair gel consistency. And my mixture is typically 1/3 Mgical liquid and 2/3 water. And then I'm just adding some color. I added a little bit of pink pop of color. I added a little bit of my mother of pearl white mica. And then I just kind of shake it up really well. See if I like the color, if I like the consistency. I decided that I wanted this a little bit lighter in color. So I did grab some white paint. This is just white pop of color chalk paint. You just need a little bit. I didn't want it super opaque. I did want the heart foil to be kind of the star of the tumbler. I just wanted kind of a milky consistency. And then I like to test my glitter to see how it's going to stay suspended in the tumbler. If it sinks to the bottom, you know you need to add more Mgical liquid. If it is really, really suspended and you want a little bit more movement, just add some more water. So I was just kind of gauging my mixture, the colors, all of that. And everybody's mixture is going to be different because we're all going to like different things. If you want your snow globe tumbler to have a lot of movement, then just add less Mgical liquid. I just like mine to stay suspended because I personally don't like it when all of the glitter falls to the bottom. I would rather have it suspended at all times. That way the tumbler is going to look great even after you've drank half of your drink. So now that I have my mixture how I want it, I'm going to start adding some glitter to the tumbler. I just like to use a little funnel, and I just hit the side of my tumbler and all of the glitter falls through the funnel and into the tumbler. And for today's glitter, we are using Coconut Cooler. You can get this on the Drunk Flamingo. And now we're going to start adding some hearts. Some tips for adding the hearts: you do have to manipulate some of them. You guys can see with the larger hearts, I'm kind of starting on inserting one of the heart curves in first and then kind of twisting it around to get it all in there. You can also use your little tweezers to kind of manipulate how you want the hearts to fall. It's also best if you put your foils into a tumbler that is dry. This one was dry, so it was very easy to get the hearts in there and kind of move them side to side. I did one where I did put a little bit of liquid in first, and it was a little bit more difficult to get the foil pieces to fall down the tumbler because they would stick to that liquid and kind of get suctioned to the side of the tumbler. So at this point, I am just filling up the tumbler with these foil hearts. I am just kind of alternating colors. We're just adding some gold and then pink and white. And these foil pieces are pretty durable. You guys can see I'm really just manipulating these hearts to get them in there. I did not have any problem with them bending, creasing, or tearing, anything like that. After I manipulated them to get them into the tumbler, they just kind of popped back into shape and looked just as good as they did before I put them in. So I am just going to start squeezing some of this liquid in there. And I do like to squeeze a little bit of liquid in and just kind of see how it looks with the glitter and the foils that I have in there, and just to see if I need to adjust the consistency any, if I need to adjust the color any. And I'm just kind of shaking it in there just to get that glitter all mixed up. And if you're happy with it, you can just go ahead and fill up the tumbler. So I decided that I wanted to add a little bit more hearts. And this is when I realized that it was a little bit more difficult to add the hearts after the liquid was already added. But having like random tools like this on hand really comes in handy sometimes. Just kind of pushing those foil pieces down in there. So I'm going to add some more glitter now. Again, we're just doing the same thing we did before. And even with the glitter, it was a little bit more difficult to get it down in there after we added the liquid to the tumbler, but it's not impossible. Typically, I do not add this much glitter to my snow globes, but I wanted this one to be super sparkly. So now we are going to fill the rest of the tumbler up with this liquid mixture. And we are going to try to get all of the air bubbles out. So we're going to fill it up as much as we can with the bottle. This one was a little bit easier to fill because there was such a large space. Typically, I need to use a medicine dropper or syringe or something like that to fill up any of the space, but I did not need to do that for this one. And I like to use this massager, and it really helps bring air bubbles to the top. So once all of the air bubbles are out, this has set overnight, all of the air is released, we are ready to seal up this hole. This is an acetate sheet that I'm using. It is fairly thick, and I just draw about a half a circle big enough that's going to cover this hole. And I'm just going to cut this out with my scissors. I always cut it just slightly larger. I don't cut the line off, just because I would rather it be a little bit too big than too small. And I'm just going to hold it up there, make sure it fits. It looks like we are good to go. So I'm just going to trim off the little excess pieces. But before we apply this to our tumbler, I am going to clean off this black paint marker with some alcohol, just because I don't want that black line showing underneath our glitter. So once that is ready to go, set it on something, because if you put it down on your desk, I promise you will lose it. So I am just cleaning off the bottom of the tumbler with alcohol. I just want to make sure that all of that liquid is off of the bottom so that we have a good surface for this UV resin to attach to. I like to use CCDIY's UV resin. It is the best one that I've tried. I am just going to add a small amount of UV resin all around this hole, so we make sure we get a good bond. And then we're just going to set our acetate sheet on top. I'm just going to press it down, make sure the whole sheet is touching that UV resin. So I'm just going to hold down the acetate until it cures, and when this layer cures, we are going to add some more clear UV resin to the bottom of the tumbler. I'm going to mix a little bit of coconut cooler, which is the same glitter we used for the snow globe part of the tumbler. I'm just going to mix this up a little bit. And once that is mixed up, I am just going to smooth it out, make sure the entire bottom is covered with this mixture. And at this point, I would typically add my logo tag, and I totally forgot to add it to this one, and I was so sad. So now we are going to cure this for another 2 minutes. And once we cure this layer, we are going to add another clear layer on top. I like to add a clear layer over the glitter layer, just so we get a nice, slick, shiny finish on top of that glitter, so we don't feel any of those glitter grains. And this is just a very thin layer. It does not need to be anything thick. And I'm just moving this tumbler around just to make sure everything is covered. And once I'm sure everything is filled completely, we are going to cure this for another 2 minutes. And now our bottom is good to go, and we can shake up our snow globe And if this is as far as you want to take it, if you don't want to add drips or anything like that, then you can stop at this point. But of course, I have to take it an extra step, and I wanted to add some drips. So for starters, we are going to tape off the very top of our tumbler. If you guys have these tumblers, you know that there are a couple different grooves in the top. So I just picked one of those grooves and just followed it with my tape line. That way we got a nice clean rim. I'm going to use Artistry Epoxy's Fast Set. This epoxy is pretty much the only thing I use. I use it for drips, for tumblers, molds, anything you can think of. You can use Artistry's Fast Set as a final coat. It does not have any type of odor. It has great UV protection. If you guys have not tried it, I definitely recommend it. I do have their link in a discount code down below. They also have free samples. You just have to pay shipping if y'all just want to start with a sample size. So for drips on a tumbler like this, I will typically mix up about 15 mils. And I'm just going to mix it up until I don't see any striations. I don't necessarily mix for a certain amount of time. I just like to mix until it is no longer cloudy, there are no more striations. Scraping the sides, the bottom, the stir stick. We want to make sure everything is well incorporated. And after I'm sure that everything is mixed up very well, then I add my color. So we are going to do a similar mixture with what we added to the liquid mixture that we added. So I am just adding just a couple drops of this pop of color. I believe it's cotton candy maybe. And then I'm going to add a little bit of this mother of pearl mica again, because I did not want my drips to be super bright pink. I just wanted it a light pink. And when I'm mixing mica, I like to just kind of force the mica down into the epoxy. If you start stirring it, then mica can kind of go everywhere. We don't want to breathe that in. I decided I wanted it a little bit more light, so I did add a couple drops of white snow dispersion color. And once you're happy with the color, you're just going to let it sit and thicken up a little bit. And adding drips with Fast Set is a little bit different than normal epoxy. With regular epoxy, I like to let it get really thick, like almost a thick molasses consistency. But with Fast Set, it needs to be a little bit more liquidy. When it starts to heat up is typically when I start to apply it to my tumbler. I always start with a very thin layer at the top of my tumbler. I don't want to add too much and have crazy drips dripping down my cup. You can always go back and add more epoxy if you need to. And I just kind of thin out that line that I apply. I also want to point out, if you guys did not see, that I do test my drips on the side of my medicine cup before I add them to my cup. That way I know that my drips are ready to apply. And in the mixing cup, it may seem like it's really liquidy, but for some reason with Fast Set, once you take it out of that hot cup where it's curing, it starts to harden almost immediately after you take it out of the cup. Or not necessarily harden, but it thickens up a lot. I'm assuming because it doesn't have that heat from the rest of the epoxy. So now that I have the top rim covered with epoxy, I like to look at where drips are naturally starting to form and kind of add a little bit more epoxy to those spaces. I also decided for this tumbler, I did want my rim a little bit thicker than normal. So I did forget that I went back and added another layer of epoxy beneath that first line that we did. So now I'm going to go back and take small little globs of epoxy, and I'm just going to apply it where the drips are already starting to form, just to help those drips drip further down the tumbler. And I just kind of look all the way around the tumbler and see where I want those extra drips to be. If you add larger globs of epoxy, your drips are going to drip further down the cup. If you just add a small little glob of epoxy, they will not drip as far down the cup. So I kind of alternate between smaller drips and larger drips, just so they're all not the same length. So I was pretty happy with how these were looking. So here is how it was looking so far. I was pretty happy with all of the drip placements. Now after I apply my drips, I will take my torch and I will just do quick burst of heat all around my tumbler just so I can pop any bubbles. Heat will also help your drips drip further down the tumbler. But if your epoxy is already pretty liquidy and dripping a lot, you do have to be careful with the heat that you add, because if you're not careful, it could heat the drips too much and they could drip all the way down the cup, and that is definitely not what we want. We also have to be careful because this is a plastic tumbler and we do not want to melt it. So once we have applied our drips, popped all of our bubbles, we are going to immediately remove the tape. And once these drips cure, your tumbler will be complete. If you want an added layer of protection for the drips, you can definitely add a layer or two of epoxy over the entire tumbler. I did not do that for this tumbler, but it's definitely something you can do if it makes you feel more comfortable. Here are finished pictures of this cup. I love how it turned out. I think the big heart confetti is just so fun. I will have another large confetti tumbler tutorial coming up, so y'all be on the lookout for that one as well. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If y'all enjoyed this tutorial or learned something new, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to catch the next video coming up that was picked just for you. As always, if you're looking for more tips, tricks, or tutorials, be sure to check out my Damn Fancy Tribe or my tutorial group on Facebook. Both are linked in the description. Thanks for watching!